Thank you very much. I do appear before you this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, as the world's first and only stand-up economist. It's a niche market. Before I go any further, I should show you my T-shirt. It's my Enjoy Capitalism T-shirt. Made in China. I actually did. It's made in China out of 80% cotton and 20% irony. I actually did just spend 5 months in China. I actually was living in a place. This was the view from my apartment. I lived in a housing complex that had 400,000 people. I was one of 2 non-Chinese people there. It was me and the guy that everybody referred to as the black guy. And I was the white guy. And people kept asking me, like they would stop me on the street and they would say, "Do you know the black guy?" And one day I actually met the black guy. He was from Ghana. He was a really nice guy. We went to McDonald's and had lunch. Anyway, this is what the view from my apartment looked like maybe 5% of the time. Much more often it looked like that. And, so yeah, there's still some pollution problems in China. I've been on a world comedy tour this year. I'm on a Return to the Gold Standard World Tour. So actually, so I was in Europe. And I actually had a funny exchange with a fellow. This is a guy I met in Texas, actually, Zlatko. He was not able to come to one of the shows I did in Europe. He said he was coming in the next day, but he wanted me to tell his girlfriend, who also went to the same university that he went to in Heidelberg, that he loved her and he was looking forward to seeing her the next day, and he asked me if I could put this in my comedy routine. And being an economist, I, of course, said that I would be happy to. So here's my email exchange with him. He says, you know, his girlfriend's going to be in the audience, and can I tell her on his behalf that he loves her? And I said, sure, for 100 euros. And then he wrote back, and he said, the 100 euros, he said, that's too much. And I wrote back, and I said, what do you mean, like she's not worth 100 euros? And he said that this was extortion. But I actually prefer to think of it as profit maximization. In any case, that's one of my fun stories from Europe. I like to tell some jokes about politics that appeal to people across the political spectrum. This is a difficult thing to do in Seattle, because in Seattle there's no political spectrum. But with your help, I'm going to create a political spectrum, so this is audience participation after the coffee and the cookies. So the way most people think about politics is left-wing, right-wing. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to divide you up down the middle. You folks over here on the left side of the room, audience participation. You guys on the left get to represent the left wing of the American political spectrum. Whoa, 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 whoa. Too much enthusiasm, left wing. Calm down. Now you folks over here on the right, I need you guys to come through for me the next couple of minutes. You guys are my right wing. That was good, but when I did this in Texas last month, they started chanting USA. I want you guys to do that for me. You guys are my right wing. USA, USA, USA. Excellent. Good work, right wing. You guys over here on the left, you guys were perfect also. Because while the right wing was chanting USA, you were just sitting there looking befuddled and vaguely unpatriotic. Now, that is how most people think about the political spectrum, as left-wing, right-wing, but of course, if you have studied like median voter theory, stuff like this, you know that that's wrong. It's actually the left wing is over here. This is the perfect room for this. The right wing is over here, and you folks over here, you all are the most important part of the American political spectrum. You all are my swing voters. Okay, now, calm down. Couple of very important things about swing voters. First of all, almost everybody is a swing voter. All right, if you are not a communist or a fascist, okay, then you are probably a swing voter. And if you do not know the difference between communists and fascists, then you are definitely a swing voter. Now, your job, swing voters, when it comes to politics and current events, extremely important. Your job is to pay absolutely no attention whatsoever. And then every 4 years, you determine the fate of the free world. I know that sounds like a big responsibility, okay, but trust me, don't give it a second thought. And that's really how the political spectrum is divided. You've got the left wing. The stereotype about the left wing is that the left wing is spineless. You've got the right wing is heartless. And you got the center is clueless. Right? Clueless and apathetic. And you're so clueless, you don't know what apathetic means. And you're so apathetic, you can't be bothered to look it up. There are also the extremes of the political spectrum. Of course, the far right of the political spectrum, just folks way on the far right over here. You all in the far right get to be my libertarians. That's cool. You can do what you want. Far left of the political spectrum, just folks over here on the far left, you all get to be my libertarians. I'm seeing confused looks from the swing voters. No, I had someone in the middle once who was like, libertarians? You mean the people that check books out for me? And I had to clarify that libertarians are freedom lovers, right? They come in two flavors. You've got right-wing libertarians. They want everybody to be free to use guns. You've got left-wing libertarians. They want everybody to be free to use drugs. Now, both wings of the Libertarian Party want to abolish Social Security and Medicare, right? Which makes total sense, okay? Because who's going to make it to 65? When the world is full of pistol-packing potheads and meth fiends with machine guns. I've been thinking a lot about politics because I was in China, and I, wanted to have something to say in case the Chinese people came up to me and said, like, tell me about democracy. That didn't happen. Instead, I went to China, and the Chinese people were like, what's up with your budget deficit? Right? And I had to say, let me tell you about democracy. I know, like, the left blames the right, and the right blames the left, but I actually blame the center. I don't think we have a budget deficit because left-wing people believe in mandates or because right-wing people believe in markets. We have a budget deficit because people in the middle believe in magic. I'm serious. I mean, every time a left-wing politician says, hey, I've got a great idea for a road or a school or a hospital, swing voters are like, yeah, let's do that. And then every time a right-wing politician says we should cut taxes, swing voters are like, yeah, let's do that. And then it turns out we have a budget deficit and you blame the politicians, which is ridiculous. And this is like going to the doctor for your checkup and the doctor tells you you've been putting on weight and the left side of your brain is like, I guess I better exercise more. And the right side of your brain says, I guess I better stop eating so many donuts. And the middle part of your brain says, I guess I better get a new doctor. Right? Like, it doesn't work that way. I wasn't in China. Everybody in China knows that China owns like $3 trillion in U.S. government debt. They didn't necessarily understand exactly what it meant. I had one fellow there who insisted to me that America was a loan shark. I was like, that is exactly backwards. Right? America's not a loan shark. America's like a borrowing walrus. Right? Just like floating in a sea of our own treasury debt. And this guy in China was like, don't talk to me about that treasury debt. You know, it's lousy. And here in China, we're pissed off that you sold us that treasury debt. And I said, that's really interesting because in America, we're pissed off that you bought it. Just as an aside, this is actually the opposite of the way that economics usually works, right? You usually have mutual benefits from trade. But to be in a situation where you have voluntary transactions between two parties who are both unhappy. Anyway, I told the fellow in China, I said I was really sorry. I apologized, on behalf of my entire country. And I said that if I could go back in time, I would have encouraged them to invest that money somewhere else, like Greece. I want to do for you this little routine that got me started doing economics comedy. So this is Mankew's Principles of Economics translated. So for those of you who don't know, Greg Mankew, Harvard professor, wrote one of the best-selling economics textbooks in the country, and it's based on these 10 principles of economics. I know there's a lot on the screen, but don't bother trying to read this. Just take my word that you pretty much need a PhD in economics to understand these 10 principles. Fortunately, I have a PhD in economics. So I've taken it upon myself to translate these principles for the more fortunate among you. We're going to begin by separating them into the first 7 principles, which are microeconomics, and the last 3, which are macroeconomics. The difference, of course, being that microeconomists are wrong about little things. And macroeconomists are wrong about things in general. We're going to start with the macro principles 8, 9, and 10. Now, believe it or not, these all have the exact same translation, namely blah, blah, blah. I can see some of you have studied macroeconomics. As proof, I need only remind you that macroeconomists have successfully predicted 9 out of the last 5 recessions. And as further proof, we can now go up 1 font size. So let's go back to the micro principles. Now, the first one, people face trade-offs. This one has a very simple translation. Choices are bad. Okay. This is actually a simple syllogism, right? Trade-offs are bad. Anytime you have choices, you have trade-offs. Therefore, choices have to be bad. If you don't understand that, take a look at the second principle. The cost of something is what you give up to get it. Translation, choices are really bad. Now, I have a simple little demonstration of this fact. Let's say that someone offers you a Snickers bar that you value at $1. Okay, then what you can loosely think of as your economic profit in this situation is the dollar of the Snickers bar minus the cost of what you give up to get it, which is nothing. Your economic profit is $1. Now, to begin to understand why choices are bad, imagine someone offers you a choice between the Snickers bar that you value at $1, right, and some M&Ms that you value at 70 cents. Okay, now your economic profit is only 30 cents. You begin to understand why choices are bad. The worst possible situation, in fact, is being offered a choice between a Snickers bar and an identical Snickers bar, because then your economic profit is 0. Right? Now, people who are not trained in economics may say that that's no different than just being offered 1 Snickers bar, but that kind of sloppy thinking will never get you a tenure-track position. Summarizing, choices are bad, choices are really bad. I'm not going to beat around the bush with you folks. If you don't understand why choices are bad, you're probably stupid. Moving on, principle number 3, rational people think at the margin. Translation, people are stupid. Right. Now, it is immediately obvious that people do not think at the margin. Nobody goes to the grocery store and says, I'm going to buy an orange. I'm going to buy another orange. I'm going to buy another orange. That joke only makes sense to econ majors. People don't think like that. Okay, but if people don't think at the margin, and if, as Mankiw says, rational people do think at the margin, we are led to a most unhappy conclusion. People are not rational. People, in other words, are stupid. But before you despair for humanity, take a look at the next principle. People respond to incentives. Now, the dictionary says that incentive is a noun, and that it's a synonym for motive. So when Mankiw says that people respond to incentives, what he's saying is that people are motivated by motives. You might think this is a bit like saying that tautologies are tautological, right? I mean, people would have to be pretty stupid to be unmotivated by motives. But remember principle 3. Right? People are stupid. Hence the need for principle number 4 to tell us that people aren't that stupid. All right, summarizing again, move on to every economist's favorite topic. Principle 5, trade can make everyone better off. Translation, trade can make everyone worse off. Now, you may wonder how the translation of Principle 5 is the opposite of the principle itself. I have a simple proof of this fact that will blow your mind. I want you to compare 2 statements. One of them is trade can make everyone better off, and the other one is trade will make everyone better off. Now, if you had to pick one of those 2 statements to put in your best-selling economics textbook, right, it's no contest. The second statement is clearly better. But Mankiw uses the first statement instead. And if you think about why, there's only one possible explanation. The second statement has got to be wrong. Okay? In other words, trade can make some people worse off, and from there it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to trade can make everyone worse off. Now, I figured some of you have some questions about this, so I added a footnote with some details. Eat your heart out. Now that we've cleared that up, right, I want you to see the last 2 principles. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Translation, governments are stupid. And governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Translation, governments aren't that stupid. I follow immediately from Principle 5 and its translation. Okay, if trade can make everyone better off, what the heck do we need government for? Just let people trade. Right? Governments are stupid. But if trade can make everyone worse off, we better have a government around to stop people from trading. So there are the 10 principles of economics translated. Much better, I think you'll agree. I filmed this a couple of years ago and put it up on my website and on YouTube, not thinking very much of it. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that it just passed 1 million hits on YouTube. Thank you. Which is a lot for economics videos. Not a lot for videos about, like, puppies. But it's a lot for economics videos. And many of those hits are because the video was posted on Greg Mankiw's blog. It turns out that he's a fan of my parody. Either that or else he comes from the school of there's no such thing as bad publicity. And in fact, I got to perform in his class at Harvard. He teaches the intro economics class at Harvard. And it was the last stop on my 2008 supply side world tour, which was mostly a trip to Israel with my father. But as long as I was there, I did some comedy there, and then I stopped off at Harvard on my way home. Originally, he wasn't going to tell the students that I was coming. He just said there was a surprise guest who was coming to class. But then he had to tell them that I was coming because some students came to his office hours and said that there was a rumor going around the Harvard campus that Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke was coming to class. I'd like to think they got the better end of the deal. In any case, one of the great things about YouTube is that not only do a lot of people waste a lot of time looking at videos on YouTube, a significant fraction of those people waste even more time commenting on videos on YouTube. And I want to share with you some of my favorite comments because they're actually funnier than the video itself. Starting with one from someone with the screen name of Coolway. And Coolway writes, I can't tell whether this is supposed to be funny or educational. Choices are bad. Runner-up comment, you're funny, and I don't say that to a lot of people. Lots of people are not funny. Lots of people are sad. I like to think that I'm doing something new in the world by doing economics comedy. Apparently not. The next person writes, a Jew who's an economist and a stand-up comedian? You can't get any more stereotypical than that. The man in the video is the most stupid man in the world. This is especially impressive given the competition. Not everybody's a fan of the video. The next person writes, I spaced off listening to this just like in my real economics class. And then there are kind of the crazy people like this. They make economics boring and confusing on purpose because they don't want you to figure that the whole economy is a Ponzi scheme. This person gets bonus points for creating a new word. Unpurpose. Not the craziest thing somebody wrote. The craziest thing somebody wrote was this. What a confusion of deceptions. The U.S. Congress does not print money as the Constitution dictates. That power was usurped by a cabal of international banksters in 1913. I finally figured out this person was talking about the Federal Reserve System, which was created in 1913, but only because the next thing that they write is that the Federal Reserve is about as Federal Express. I honestly have no idea what that means, but I'm pretty sure this guy's voting for Ron Paul. So after this guy writes this nasty stuff about the Federal Reserve on my YouTube comments page, somebody else feels compelled to come to the defense of the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States on my YouTube comments page. So here's what the next person writes. In defense of the Fed, if we got rid of it, we'd still need to replace it with something that does its functions, i.e. printing money and clearing checks. Okay, the first of which the Fed doesn't do. The second of which is a very minor role that the Fed has. So somebody else has to write in and correct this person and say, actually, the Fed doesn't print money, the Treasury does. And this is like an A+ answer. The Fed controls the money supply by expanding and contracting bank reserves. And then the first person writes back in and says, oh, yeah, that's right, thanks. Not all exchanges are this nice. One person writes in and says, this video rules. By the way, I'm not an economist. I switched my major, which compels somebody else to write in and say, thanks for keeping us updated. let us know when you drop out altogether and devote your life to smoking crack. Kids these days. I'm going to come back to this slide in a few minutes. It's been a very big year for economics comedy. I got to be on the PBS NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. I don't know how much you all know about the world of stand-up comedy, but let me just tell you this, ladies and gentlemen. In the world of stand-up comedy, it does not get any bigger than the PBS NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. They actually interviewed 3 economists on this show. They interviewed Joseph Stiglitz, who won the Nobel Prize. They interviewed Ken Arrow, who won the Nobel Prize. And they interviewed me. I felt like kind of a self-aware version of Sarah Palin. And what did they ask me? A moment of fame on the TV, on the interview with Jim Lehrer. What did they ask me? They asked me if I'd ever bombed on stage. Right? If I ever bombed on stage. Now, a couple things about this. First of all, I'm not afraid of failure. I'm an economist. Secondly, I'm a professional comedian, right? So if a joke doesn't work, you just sort of keep throwing stuff out there until you find something that sticks, which is basically the same thing that the Federal Reserve has been doing for the last couple of years. Finally, I had to admit on the PBS NewsHour with Jim Lehrer that, in fact, I had bombed on stage. The worst show I ever did was in October of 2008. You remember what the stock market was doing in October of 2008? I did a show for some bankers. And I did terribly. And I did so poorly, I spent some time afterwards sort of soul-searching, like trying to figure out where had I lost the connection with this audience of bankers in October of 2008. And I finally realized that I lost them on my opening line. And my opening line was, "Hey, how's it going?" You've been a fun audience. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoyed the break.